Welcome back to the podcast and to the latest instalment of Two Blues Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Chelsea Football Club. New season, same unrivaled content, and we are back this week to give you a match report, not just from the seniors' first game of the season against Crystal Palace, which was a frustrating draw at the weekend after a very, very good pre and post last season, but also a very, very good win for the under-21s last night, the development squad. After getting spanked by Manchester City last season, they managed to run out 3-1 winners last night, thanks to a Shim Mhueka hat-trick. Captain the team and led by example, but we will get onto that in a little bit. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll get straight into it, talking about Chelsea's 0-0 against Crystal Palace. We struggle against Crystal Palace. We always struggle against Crystal Palace. And I tweeted, it's always Eze before the ball even hit the back of the net. We just cannot beat these teams. Everton, Fulham, Brentford. We've had a number of different bogey teams over the years, but Crystal Palace is a real bogey team of ours, a real difficult team that Chelsea have to face. And I'm not by any means dissuaded. I'm not less enthusiastic, less positive, less hopeful about the season off of this one result. I've seen a lot of people immediately, Chelsea stuttering, Chelsea nowhere near what they were in pre-season. This game was always going to be very, very different, very, very difficult. And I think, you give certain teams credit, such as Bayer Leverkusen, AC Milan. It's easy to sit here and say that these teams are better on paper than Crystal Palace. But they present a very, very different challenge. It's not just the level in quality, it's the way in which they set up. And, all credit to Crystal Palace and particularly to Oliver Glasner. I think what they've done in the last couple of seasons, the football that they play, Oliver Glasner's managed to match Mikel Arteta's legacy in terms of trophies in just 6 months. The football that they're playing is fantastic, very easy on the eye. But as I said, this is not a team that we should be taking lightly. This is not a team that Chelsea would have been expected to roll over. And I think, all things considered, I think we did okay on Sunday. I think everybody is rushing to the goalkeeper and the defence. Chelsea aren't good enough. I mean, the problems were at the top end of the pitch in terms of our chance conversion, also creating chances. And this has been an underlying problem for 2-3 seasons now. This is not something that has just cropped up on Sunday. Haven't seen it before, out of the blue. It was very much new season, same old Chelsea. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we did keep the ball very well. We dominated possession. I think it was above 70% possession. We probably had more clear-cut chances, if not a similar amount of clear-cut chances to Crystal Palace. And while they did look probably more dangerous on the break, we limited them to that. We limited them to the break. And look, Jean-Philippe Mateta, incredibly good striker. Very, very physical. Very, very good with the ball at his feet as well. When you have a game plan based around, a big target man that is going to hold the ball up off of a 19-year-old, he's virtually a debutant. I know he made his debut, his Premier League debut in the return fixture last season against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, managed to get man of the match then. Josh Acheampong, again, for me, got man of the match at the weekend. I thought he was superb. And all the talk at the moment is around Chelsea getting a new centre-back. Enzo Maresca being very vocal about, the lack of cover at centre-back left, by the gap left by Levi Colwill in his ACL injury, and his lack of faith in players such as Badiashile, Wes Fofana to be able to step in and do that role. It's not a lack of faith in those players per se. I think he's been quite vocal about wanting to bring Badiashile back into the fold. But I just feel like he sees those players as more of a left or a right-sided centre-back, and he sees Levi Colwill as the rock in that defence. And we do have, Tosin had a minor injury at the weekend. I think he's already back in training. But Tosin can do that role. Chalobah can do that role. He's a little bit more of an aggressive foot-forward centre-half. But these are players that we can rely on. And Levi Colwill, it's absolutely nuts. The discourse, the conversations around Levi Colwill 6 months ago within the Chelsea fan base to now. 6 months ago, a lot of Chelsea fans didn't even want him on the bench, let alone in the starting lineup. Levi Colwill, I've long said, is one of the players that I wouldn't sell for any fee, for no money. If someone bid 100, 150 mil, I'd say no. I think he is a future captain, future England captain. He leads by example. He is fantastic with the ball at his feet, and he is only going to grow and improve. And that's exactly the same can be said for Josh Acheampong. I thought this was a player that when he made his debut, when he made that step up, albeit in the Conference League, he looked like he didn't miss a step. He didn't look like his heart missed a beat. He was calm, he was assured. And not only is Josh Acheampong fantastic at doing that aggressive carrying the ball forward, which is something that Enzo Maresca really likes. And, one of the main reasons that we went for Jorel Hato, a very, very aggressive ball-carrying centre-back. Not only can he do the runs with the ball at his feet, he can also split the lines with a great passing range. I think Josh Acheampong is brilliant at passing. And also, he can do that last man, you saw from that double challenge against Jean-Philippe Matata. I think that was probably more impressive, that double challenge, than anything else any Chelsea player did over 90 minutes. And that might be a little bit of bias coming from me because I'm a centre-back and I love to watch. I give a lot more credit for these defensive actions that I think people don't get credit for. That's one of the reasons why I love Moises Caicedo so much, because I think so much of what he does, if you watch over 90 minutes, a lot of what he does won't get picked up or won't get spoken about. Because it is the tracking back, it's the IQ to be in the right place at the right time, to make the right challenge. And of course, nobody in a Chelsea fan base or nobody in a Chelsea shirt is doubting or questioning Moises Caicedo. I think he was superb again at the weekend. And it is got to the point where we don't even say excellent from Caicedo. We just same again from Caicedo. Untouchable. There is not a player that can do what he does. Defensively, the way he can carry the ball through. I think there was a really, really tidy little bit of play where he got pulled back by Will Hughes as well. Lovely footwork. He demonstrates every single aspect of a central midfielder. And you can talk about Rodri, Jude Bellingham. Some people talk about Declan Rice. There are so many boxes that Caicedo ticks that they don't. I'm not saying that they don't tick a lot of boxes and they aren't excellent midfielders within their own right, but Moises Caicedo is the closest thing we've had to Moises to N'Golo Kante since N'Golo Kante. He's the closest thing that we've had to Makelele since Makelele, and Essien and Mikel and all of these world-class centre midfielders that Chelsea have been blessed with in the past. We've just got a regen. We have a knack for picking out this pivot, this anchor at the bottom of midfield. And I think one of the reasons that Enzo Fernandez is getting a lot of flack is because of how good Caicedo is. And I can't believe that Enzo Fernandez, I'm seeing content being put out about how good Chelsea are with Enzo compared to how we are. Enzo Fernandez, for all of the criticism that he's got, and, there may have been a few games where he hasn't been performing. On Sunday, I'll be the first to say it. I thought he was one of the worst Chelsea players on the pitch. But that's not to say that it needs a whole conversation about it. Does he need replacing? Do we need to starting Santos? He got 26 goals and assists last season, Enzo Fernandez, which was the one thing that we asked him to do to improve his game. The year before last, everything was fantastic. He was a brilliant distributor of the ball. He was the one that dictated play. Pochettino asked him more often than not to play way out of position, way too high for what he is suited for. But when he was playing to his strengths, he was excellent. And at the end of that season, everyone kind of went, look, great season, second season and a half in the Premier League. You've kind of got used to the tempo now. He's very good in the tackle, very good with the ball at his feet. Now we need to see some box crashing. Now we need to see some end product. We need to see some goals, some assists. Turn into that Lampard number 8, arriving at the box late, scoring. And he got 26 goals and assists, 26 goal contributions last season. And that was a massive increase. It over doubled what he did the season prior. And now Chelsea fans are looking for another issue. It's like this guy is continually improving. He's continually building on the 105 mil that we spent on him. I wouldn't say he's paid it off by any stretch, but I'd say he's a lot closer to paying off that fee than a lot of other players in and around that margin. And I do think if the fees were 40, 50 million, it wouldn't even be a conversation. It would be he had a slightly an off game today, move on, chalk it up to form and go again next week. I honestly think the conversations around these two, whenever one of them, and it's very rarely Caicedo, because I can't remember the last time he had a poor game, but whenever one of these drops off slightly, there's an immediate beeline from not only the rivals, but our fan base as well, to say, why is he not performing? Why is he? Let's scrutinise him. Let's put a microscope on him. Unnecessary. First game of the season, yes, the levels weren't there, But you know what? In a game like that, I probably would have played 3 in midfield. I probably would have did what we did last season when Enzo Maresca chose to play Lavia, Caicedo and Enzo and dominate the midfield a little bit more. You saw how tight that game was. It was so condensed. Chelsea were continually looking to play through the middle. And for some reason, and Crystal Palace just allowed it, they pulled us in. For some reason, we didn't want to switch it out. We didn't want to use those wide channels, which, fair enough, might be Enzo Maresca might be seeing something that I'm not. But if you're going to do that, you need to win that battle. And I feel like a lot of the times in centre midfield, we weren't. And this is where, the subs bench this season is going to come in, particularly come in handy. Because last season we saw, and one thing that, we said we'd like to see a little bit more of, the lineups were tweaked game to game. And I really like that. I like the fact that Enzo Maresca can look at an opposition and say, right, okay, this is slightly different to last week. This is what we're going to do slightly different. And he doesn't mind, picking and choosing a couple of different players, different formation, different system based on the opposition. I think that in today's day and age is a very, very smart and sensible decision. But I do feel like the different dynamics that we can bring now off the bench, we're not going to get the whole kind of measure of this for a while. Because at the end of the day, 2 games in pre-season, and that was a week ago, there's going to be a lot of mental fatigue, not just physical fatigue, but a lot of mental fatigue with a lot of these players. And the one thing that we've got to remember, and my mind will always go back to the Ipswich game last season, when Robert Sanchez, we were passing the ball around at the back, someone started booing, Robert Sanchez kicked the ball long, ball came up the other end and Delap scored. This Chelsea team is still incredibly young, incredibly inexperienced, and they need that 12th man. They need to continually believe they are going in the right direction. And when you look at the form, I think that's 2 losses in now 20 games, or 19 games might be, having won 17, or having won 16 out of 19. 2 losses, 1 draw now with Palace. But this Chelsea team is now so multifaceted. We are able to switch on a dime in any given direction. You need to stretch the game, and you need to bring on flair, pace. From the wing, you bring on Estevao. You need to shore up the centre of midfield. You take an attacker off and you bring on Andre Santos or Dario Asugo if we're winning the game. You need to go hell for leather and you need to put 2 up top. You take one of the wingers on and put the lap on and play him alongside João Pedro. And there are so many different dynamics to this Chelsea team now. And, fingers crossed, we still get the addition of Xavi Simons. It has seemingly gone a little bit quiet on that front, but Florian Plettigol, or whatever his name is, Plettiberg, seems to think that it is just a matter of fee. Christopher Nkunku to Bayern and Xavi Simons to Chelsea are all but done. Literally just needs to be a fee agreed, personal terms, no issue. But that again is another player that I think will help change the dynamic and will help to keep things fresh. And while I would have liked to see a bit more of a dramatic system change on Sunday, that's not to say that he didn't change the system. We put the lap on for João Pedro. Instantly, the game opened up a bit. It was less of the dropping in, more going in behind. He got a couple of runs, couple of shots on target, couple of, passages of play where we held the ball up and laid it off. And it did look like Chelsea have that impetus now. Chelsea have that so often, so many times last season, even though we had good players to bring off the bench, Madueke, Sancho, Neto, a lot of the time, there were a couple of attackers to bring off the bench. It wasn't really, it was very much plug and play. It was very, you take one out and put one in. But this is very much, right, you take one out and it's a whole rejig. And it could well mean, Gitten's coming off, Neto going over, Estevao. But that in itself, I was thinking, let Neto go over and have a go at Munoz. Munoz was booked in the first half. Gittins wasn't really getting into him. And I thought, you know what, Neto, you just tell him to go and commit him every single time. He might lose the ball 1-2 times out of 3. But that one time that he gets past and Munoz sticks a leg out, that's a red card. And I do think we need to play more to our strengths. And obviously at the weekend, that would have been, into the wide positions a little bit more. But at the same time, obviously, Estevao, who I think a lot of people would have been expecting to make an impact and hoping to make an impact. Obviously, it's going to take him a while to settle in and a while to get up to the pace, the intensity, the strength of the Premier League. It's immediately you saw Estevao came on, they doubled up. And that is something he's going to have to get very, very used to. Not just the doubling up, but much like Bukayo Saka, Eden Hazard, he's going to have to get used to having his shins kicked. Because he is so good, defenders are not even going to bother trying to win the ball. he is going to come onto the pitch and defenders are just going to go, you know what? First challenge, I'm sticking it to him and praying that he doesn't want it after that. Obviously, you know, Brazil, incredibly physical country. The football down there is just as intense, if not more than it is here. So I don't doubt that he will be prepared for that sort of thing. But, you know, at the same time, it's one of those where when I'm looking at the different outlets that we have and the way in which that we can switch up, I'm not really considering Estevao kind of an option at this point because, you know, he does need a few games to get in. That being said, he was brilliant when I saw him against Bayer Leverkusen. Obviously got his first goal. I thought he was very, very sharp. And it was the lack of fear that I liked the most against Crystal Palace. You know, he just came on and it was very much, I feel like Enzo Maresca just said, come on, do what you do. You don't need any notes from me. And I feel like that is very much the sort of player he is. He knows what he's going to do. He knows that no matter who's in front of him, he's going to try it. You know, whether it was Tyreek Mitchell, whether it was Gehi, whether it was someone else that was doubled up on him, he was thinking, I'm going for this. I'm going to skin you. And he did Gehi once, you know, got a little bit of fortune in the way the ball bounced for him. But this guy is going to be massive. He's going to be unbelievably good for Chelsea. We obviously just need to, you know, not heap too much expectation on his shoulders right now. Keep him happy, keep him fit, keep him playing, and hopefully get him scoring fairly soon. But I think this Chelsea side had far more positives for me than negatives at the weekend. And yes, it did become a little bit cumbersome in the second half. It was a little bit of a snooze fest if you look at the game as a whole. It wasn't the most exciting game. But getting back into it, there are far worse things to start the season with than a 0-0, than a clean sheet at home to a team like Crystal Palace, which not only had beaten the Premier League champions the week previously, but we knew regardless of that, we're going to be a tough customer. Crystal Palace are always a difficult team for Chelsea to beat, and Oliver Glasner has got them playing some superb football. So look, I'm not going to sit here and dwell too much on the weekend's lack of points. You know, we still got a point on the board. It's a clean sheet. Robert Sanchez is one step closer to that Golden Glove. Come on. He needs to go. I'm not even going to spend time on this. We spoke about it in the pre-season preview. Look, even if I was going to say, even if there's nothing Robert Sanchez could do to convince me that he's the right guy for the job. It is very much a waiting game now, and I'm sitting here going, 37 games left until Mike Penders comes in. Because he started for Strasbourg at the weekend, first start, first clean sheet. They obviously love him because he's a great keeper. I need this guy at the club. I know how much Charms loves him. I need Mike Penders back in this club right now. And you know what? If he's setting the world alight in January, let's bring him back. Because honestly, this is a problem that needs addressing. But, you know, going back to that centre-back problem, or that centre-back issue that Maresca's been very vocal about, potentially bringing in another centre-back, I do worry that if we do spend a lot of money, you know, he's going to play a big part of this season. Colwell's going to come back, and either Colwell hasn't got a place in the team, or someone like Chalobah's been forced out of the team. Someone like Josh Acheampong has had to go and get a loan because his playing times have been reduced. I personally think we've got more than enough, and I have so much faith in the youth, and particularly Josh Acheampong. I think he is a brilliant player. I won't repeat myself from what I said earlier. You know, all the different attributes I think he has in abundance. But I do just think this is something where Chelsea need to go out on Chelsea need to take a risk. And it would be a risk either way, let's be honest. It's a risk going out and spending 50, 60 million on a centre-back in today's market, particularly when you've done 40 million on Badiashile, 40 million on Disasi, and, you know, neither of them can get in the dressing room, let alone on the team sheet. We're struggling to get rid of Disasi. We're struggling to get rid of Ben Chilwell. You know, we need to think before throwing money at the problem. And I do think Acheampong is more or less the answer, personally. But as we're talking about the youth and moving away, nice little segue from moving away from the seniors draw to the youth, to the under-21s, the development squad, who played last night against Manchester City. And as I said earlier, they got spanked last season. I think it was 5-0 at the City, at City. Ryan McQueen, ex-Chelsea player, or ex-Chelsea youngster, part of the score in there. And they were well and truly beaten by a better side. But last night, I think it was Callum McFarlane's first game in charge of the under-21s. Obviously, their first game of the season. And, yeah, Shim Mhueka. 2 headers and a brilliant solo goal. I I think two brilliant assists as well. Leo Cardoso with the first one. Genesis Antwi, obviously a name a lot of Chelsea fans will be familiar with. There were a fair few names. I mean, let's just run through the team very quickly, because fingers crossed these are players that we will be hearing a lot more and seeing a lot more of this season. But Ted Kurd started in goal, or played in goal, sorry. I thought he was brilliant. He looked really, really good with the ball at his feet, made a couple of really good saves. The one thing that maybe he could have done better, the goal, it was an absolute rocket, so I haven't seen enough angles to be critical of him, but I think he did get beaten at his near post, so he might be disappointed, but at the same time, he made some really, really good saves, really, really assured with the ball at his feet. I was really impressed with Ted Kurd, and I think with a couple of goalkeepers leaving, both on loan, we've seen, Teddy Sharman Lowe go out again, and a couple of, obviously, like I said, Mike Penders as well. A couple of keepers going on loan, a couple of keepers being released. I think Ted Kurd is one that, still very much in the running to be promoted and to play for the Chelsea team. I think this is a position that's been particularly saturated in terms of players, in terms of competition. But Ted Kurd is a very, very good young prospect. And a couple of the other standout performers for me, I thought, again, Genesis Antwi, like I said, Chelsea fans will be familiar with his name. Played at right back. He can do right back, right wing back, right wing. His delivery into the box is fantastic. He's a very, very strong boy. And he's also got a really, really, he's comfortable to put the ball in right foot, left foot, but right foot, he delivers a wicked cross. And the ball in for the second goal for Shim Mhueka, 47 odd minutes. Superb ball, superb header. But the one that impressed me most was Cardoso. I think the first header, Shim Mhueka managed to loop over it, was in stoppage time in the first half. But the ball that Cardoso put in, and I thought Cardoso had a really, really good first half particularly. Playing off the right wing, he's a young Portuguese player, but he is very, very good. He's fast, he's direct, he's aggressive. He had a couple of opportunities and he nearly scored an incredible solo goal fairly early on as well. Just kind of running with the ball at his feet, couldn't get it off him, ran through about 3 challenges and then narrowly missed the far corner. But he was someone that I was really impressed with last night. Caden Wilson at centre-back, not someone that has been spoken about massively on this channel. I think I've always had an affinity for Ishe Samuel Smith in defence. Obviously, he's gone to Strasbourg on a permanent this season. Fingers crossed we'll be seeing him do very well and hopefully coming back to Chelsea one day. And we will, of course, be covering all of the Strasbourg loanees, and we'll cover the players that we sold permanently as well in our weekly loan watch series, which I will be bringing back as of next week. But yeah, the players, I mean, it's hard. I'm looking down the team sheet now. It's hard to talk about someone that didn't impress me. I think Harrison Murray-Campbell is a fantastic centre-back. Not too much to speak about last night personally, but I think he's a great player. I think he made the bench a couple of times under Enzo Maresca last season, so I'd be surprised if, that doesn't replicate itself in one of the early stages of the Cups this season. Landon Emanalo, I'm a big, big fan. If you watch this channel, if you watch the Academy stuff, I'm a big fan of Landon Emanalo. He's young. I think he's 16. Really, really good. He is the son of Michael Emanalo, if you were wondering. But he is a fantastic ball-playing defender. I think he can play in centre and midfield as well, but he is more often than not a centre-back. But he was playing some really, really nice balls down the left side, particularly for Kavuma McQueen, who we will get onto in a little bit, because he was undoubtedly the standout apart from Mhueka. But Emanalo looks really, really solid, can play with both feet, and like I said yesterday, playing at left back, he was putting some really nice balls down the line, really well-weighted passes for Kavuma McQueen. So hopefully that's a pairing, hopefully that's a combination that we're going to see a lot more of in the youth side this season. In the centre of midfield, it was Ollie Harrison and Harrison McMahon. There are two Harrisons and a Ollie Harrison in the team. I was more impressed with McMahon. I thought, particularly in the first half, great passing range, really, really controlled it. Obviously we've got Reggie Walsh in front of him, who plays in the 10. He's a little bit more advanced, so he's kind of a little bit more of the creative player. But also, I feel like he's probably more of the metronome. If you're looking for a player to dictate, I mean, more often than not, when Keanu Dyer plays, it's Keanu Dyer. But I thought yesterday it was kind of a mix of Walsh and McMahon. I thought Walsh didn't show as much as he usually does and what we know he is capable of. Obviously, having been promoted to the first team squad on multiple occasions and, brilliant moment for him, let's just say, playing against Luka Modric in pre-season this season. But yeah, I thought the centre of midfield, I thought they all did very, very well. I thought, like I said, particularly McMahon controlled the ball, very, very good passing range. And then moving forward into the front three, obviously spoken about Cardoso already. And Shim Mhueka led the line by example. Captain fantastic. 3 goals, 2 great headers and 1 brilliant solo effort from a long ball in the 89th minute. It was the latter stages. They pulled one back to 2-1 Man City, and then Shim said, "Nah, we'll stop you right there. That's enough, lads." Absolutely, dominated his other number. Just sent him back in, ridiculously strong. The other thing that I like though about Shim is he's not just brilliant at being that target man and doing the hold-up play. He's incredibly strong, but he uses that to his advantage with the ball at his feet as well. He is a great dribbler. And I've seen quite a lot of people say he's not, and these, mainly Tacticos on Twitter, I've seen a lot of people say that Mhueka is not a striker. He is best suited as a 10 or as a second striker. And I'm starting to see that. And I've always kind of disagreed with that purely because his numbers are so good. And he is just such a lethal finisher. He is such a he's such a prevalent scorer in this Chelsea youth team. And obviously, hat-trick in his first game. I expect him to hit minimum 20-25 for the development squad this season, and also get a few goals for the Chelsea side. I know he made his debut in the Conference League last season. I'd be very surprised if he didn't get called up. He is going to be one of, if not the first players called up when we get an opportunity in a cup game, I think. But Shim Mhueka, I think, is one of those strikers where he can do 2-3 different roles. I think if you set him 2-1, if you gave him one task, I think he'd be a specialist. I think he'd be exceptional at it. But he's got so many different attributes to his game that I like. He's able to run in behind. He's able to come deep. He's able to go out wide. He's got pace. He's got power. He's got brilliant finishing ability. And his work rate is insatiable. He, like I said, leads the line by example, not just on the ball, but off it as well. I thought his hustle, his work rate was superb yesterday, as was Ryan Kavuma McQueen, who at just 16 years old becomes, I believe, the youngest player in the team. I think he's younger than Reggie Walsh, but he this is a dangerous player. This is a kid with talent, 16 years old, and when I tell you he can beat his man, he's got skill, he's got ability, and the one thing that I particularly like about him is he is so aggressive and direct. Every time, a lot of the time, not only off the ball, off the ball as well. There was one pressing challenge he made on the goalkeeper a little bit late, which was unbelievable. I loved it. Loved to see it. I would rather he did that than scored. But this is a kid that undoubtedly, he was looking for his first goal last night, first goal of the season, and he will undoubtedly get it very soon, and many more to come. I think he'd already scored a couple in pre-season, or a couple of the friendly games that the youths played in the last couple of weeks. But this is a kid that, not just for Chelsea, but for England, is going to be talked about. He's going to be getting a call up soon. He plays, 5 years above his weight for the Chelsea development squad. Like I said, only a couple of months younger than Reggie Walsh, who made his debut last season and really impressed me last year. A lot of times, it's fantastic when the youth get involved and when they get minutes. A lot of times it's, bit part cameos here and there. They don't really make an impact. It is just to kind of give them the experience, which is fantastic within its own right. But I genuinely think this is a player that could make an impact this season. I think this will be I think last year was his breakout year. I think this year he will be looking to solidify himself. I say looking to solidify himself. I'd be very surprised if he is not starting week in, week out for the youngsters. Even with the addition of Jesse Derry, I'd say he's got a lot of work to do to oust Ryan Kavuma McQueen from this starting lineup, because this is a kid that has his IQ, footballing ability, commitment, everything is there, and I really, really like it. And yeah, it's a player for Chelsea fans to get extremely excited about. With all of these signings that we bring in, Kendry Paez, Estevao Willian, Denis Sabastiev, all of these youngsters that Giovanni Quenda, all of these youngsters we're signing at 16, 17, 18, and we're being told is the next big thing, the next Messi, the next Yamal. Listen, we've got about 4 of them in the academy at the moment. And yeah, I think last night, the team as a whole, I was going to say blew me away. Look, really, really impressed me. I wasn't expecting too much, in terms of a result, particularly when I kind of cast my mind back to the previous game that we played and how well City played and how well they dominated against us. But look, I have long said that Chelsea have one of, if not the best academies in the world. And I would stick by that. I think, again, this season is a very, very exciting season for the youth. I think I'd be very surprised if a few of them don't pick up loan moves in January. I think particularly Shim, if he hasn't worked his way into the Chelsea team sheet by then, I think he'll be, we'll be looking to get him as much experience as we can, as soon as we can, because this is a player that's ready. These are players that are good enough. And yes, they may need a little bit of a transition period for physical adaptation or to get used to a different league or a different team or a different system. But yeah, as I said, last night was Callum McFarlane's first game in charge of the under-21s, or first Premier League 2 game in charge of the under-21s. And they looked fantastic. They really looked solid as a unit. I think controlled the game very well. It was very even first half. Very, very even. I think you could even argue City had the better chances. But Chelsea, made it count. Shim Mhueka with a really important header just before half-time, got us in 1-0 up at half-time, scored, 2 minutes into the second half, and the game was so, you could have thought that the game was dead and buried because of how well Chelsea controlled the game. And yes, they did come back a little bit later on and get one goal. I can't remember who the scorer was. They managed to pull one back before Shim got his hat-trick. But I think the way in which Chelsea controlled the game was fantastic, and that's something that I'm very, very excited to see more of this season. As I said, you're going to be getting a lot more academy content from us this year, or from me specifically this year. But yeah, let us know what you thought of both performances if you watched them. Let me know what you think of the first Chelsea performance of the season, Chelsea Palace. Did you think we did enough? Do you think we still need a centre back? Are we crying out for another addition, or can Josh Acheampong step up and do that job? And who are you most excited to see this season from the development squad? Is it Kavuma, McQueen? Is it Mhueka? Is it Antwi? Is it Walsh? Or is it someone that we haven't seen, or someone else that I haven't mentioned that you're hoping will make their Chelsea debut this season? Let us know in the comments. Obviously, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and to follow Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. We'll be back very soon for some more great Chelsea content. Up the Chelsea.